Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. I am your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm very privileged to welcome an accomplished woman from Mumbai, India, Ruby Thapar. Ruby, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ashutosh. What a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Ruby is a joiner of dots and a transition coach. She's worked for the corporate sector for several years in CSR and corporate affairs. She's an independent board director on several companies. She's a coach. And interestingly, she's a reputation, crisis, and sustainability strategist. Very important in today's world. So Ruby, let's first start talking about your avatar as a coach. What made you become a coach?
The sheer possibility of being able to touch someone deeply, I think it's priceless. That was my biggest motivation of transitioning as a coach. I think the second thing I observed as a manager and working in the corporate sector and leading teams is that sometimes people are not aware about their potential. It's either unleashed or unknown. And I think as a coach, that's the opportunity when you look at it from the outside in, that the person has much more than what they're willing to play at, and for whatever reasons. And it's boundaryless what people can harness when you are in a coaching profession. So I think that was my region. Inspiration is from sports. Just look at the way they bring talent out. They bring people out. There's so many lessons in sports and I was, wondering, why is sports so inspirational? It's because it touches so many dimensions of our life.
Well said. So, when I was growing up, and I'm much older, but 4 decades ago, a coach was either a senior family member or a senior colleague in your company who took a fancy for you and decided to take you under his or her wing. In those days, more his wing. How or what has changed that coaching has now become so structured and something that you're willing to pay for?
So I think the world has changed. I mean, if you look at just work, I don't think work is about a place to go anymore. It's about what you do. We are talking about leaderless teams where world has become agile and nimble at the same time. I think as a leader, you're expected to play so many roles, do a catch up so fast that it's tough. I mean, and if you look at now from after COVID, I think it's going to be a leaderless world, virtual teams. People will be responsible for themselves. And I think 3 things are called upon. One is being the ability to lead yourself, the ability to lead others, and the ability to lead an enterprise. And you're expected to wear all these 3 hats simultaneously. And I think that's where coaching has come into play and becoming more and increasingly relevant in today's time.
Okay. And what would you say is the difference between coaching and mentoring?
So I think what you described earlier was mentoring, where somebody knew a lot, had the connections, could advise you. It was more conversations that happened. The relationship had no fixed timeline. So I think that still falls in the gamut of mentoring, and it has its own role. I think you need sponsors, you need mentors when you're part of organizations. Whereas coaching is more a relationship of equals, I find. I don't think the coach knows any better at times than the coachee, because what you work with is what the coachee brings. And you really don't know. The conversation is so dynamic, you don't know what the coachee is going to bring and what you will have to work with. And that is why you need certification. That is why you need training to be able to qualify as a coach. Also, it's more dialogue based. The coachee may completely disagree with you, and then you take it on from there. So I think that's the big difference between coaching and mentoring, for me at least.
Very interesting. So my next question on coaching is that how long should an association with a coachee be?
So I think the space is evolving. Let me be very honest. It could be a 15-minute conversation where you have struck gold, or it could be a formal engagement of 6 to 8 sessions, depends on what the organization wants. I think so it really depends on the need and the agenda. And nowadays we have more individuals. I have individuals reaching out to want coaching. It
Mhm.
will not necessarily be sponsored by the organization. So self-sponsor is becoming a big thing.
Wow.
So that will change. Then it is session by session. So there you don't tie a contract. But if it's with the corporate, it could be 6 to 8 sessions. So with an individual self-sponsor, it could be 15 minutes or a one session and you've done your bit. I think the other thing that I would advocate, especially, is to look at it long term and not short term. So, you have a 6 to 8 coaching sessions, coaching engagement, and then it's over. And the coachee is now used to having an unconditional, neutral platform of conversation, which is amiss. So what I'm recommending is every 3 months, if you could do a check-in call till the person is sustained. The other opportunity is when you talk to people, you suddenly realize that you have 2 to 3, 4 coaching agendas, and it is not possible to deal with everything at the same time. I think it's putting yourself under too much stress. So you may decide to take breaks and then come back for another agenda which you want to be looked at. The other piece that is coming up is co-coaching. 2 coaches coming together and working with a team. I think there is so much benefit in it because you get so much more perspective. So I really don't know. I think the space is evolving. People are talking about team coaching, group coaching, individual coaching, self-sponsored coaching. So I would say as long as the coachee is engaged, the coaching should continue. The moment the coachee is not engaged, it's not
Very
good.
interesting. One more question relating to coaching. One of the questions I'm often asked by people is, how do I evaluate my coach? How do I know that I have the right coach?
So I think I'm going to use the word fit. So look whether you have a fit with the coach. When you're so the chemistry meeting is very important. So I would always say have a 1 hour, 45 minutes to 1 hour meeting with the coach and see how you feel. Did you feel you came out of a graceful dance? Did you feel trusted? Did you lose track of time? Were you able to talk uninhibited to the coach? Was the coach driving their agenda or your agenda? Did you come back with 2 to 3 nuggets which you discovered or rediscovered about yourself? Did you feel propelled to change? Go back, make notes. Then I think that's a good fit for a coach. Would be some good parameters to evaluate a coach. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now let's move to your next avatar, which is your role as a specialist in ESG, the environment, social, and governance, a kind of topic which is now the buzzword in every boardroom. How much importance is being given to ESG in corporate India and why?
So I think ESG is back on the agenda. It has re-entered boardrooms. Maybe the first step we took was CSR committees. India is the only country in the world to have a legal mandate around CSR. But now I think the scope has expanded to ESG. And you have more boards, more companies looking at ESG much more seriously. I think COVID has been a game changer. While climate change, global warming has been in conversation, but the impact and the aftermath and what can happen, COVID has just opened a Pandora's box.
Right.
So I see a lot more post the COVID. I see a lot more demand for people to want to look at ESG more seriously. And it covers all 3 aspects: environment, social, and governance. So it doesn't take away the economic aspect of it, So I think it's back on the agenda. It's important. People are serious. But like I was telling you earlier, you cannot look at it linearly. It cannot be, we should have a CSR, ESG agenda on the board as well. But what does it mean for your business? What should be some of the criteria that you should look at? What will be materiality? What are your business risks? I think it needs to be looked at in a much more circular fashion versus a linear fashion. Are we there? No, but we are walking the path. And I think we should be very proud as Indians. We're globally at par on the ESG agenda as any country.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
And, based on all the organizations you have worked with or continue to work with, what are some of the challenges being faced with regard to ESG in corporate India?
So I think it's too complex. People are still figuring out the interconnectedness with their business. Still trying to understand that space and define that space. So, I look at it like this, that the ESG agenda is come from the West. What India needs to do is to find out what is relevant as an ESG agenda for them. We cannot adapt verbatim the standards that the West is talking about. I think the life cycle and the landscape is very different. So I think that's the struggle right now. We understand the importance, the intention is right, but how do you map this? How do you shape it to what works for you? One for the country, one for the product and the vertical that you are part of. It is going to be very, very different. Unfortunately, in India, the bigger challenge is that all this is sitting with the corporates. Whereas if you see, we kind of put a moral responsibility on companies, and for them to decouple growth, which contributes to GDP, the prosperity of our company, the prosperity of each one of us, is I don't think a fair agenda. I think we need platforms of dialogue, neutral platforms of dialogue with government. So policy supports you. Civil society supports you. We all have a role. ESG is what? It's behavior change, fundamental. And then what the corporate can do. I think their ability to influence is much huger than the other two, which is, I don't think anybody is debating that. But are you going to say that the buck rests with them? I don't think that's a fair conversation to have. This is my personal view.
Very interesting. And again, your thoughts on how ESG is being perceived beyond the companies that are in the Sensex or in the large companies. How is it being perceived in the smaller or mid-sized companies?
I think anybody who has a global value chain is aware. So awareness is, I remember a long time back, I was sent for a GRI training, Global Reporting Initiative. And the trainer was taking us through basics. And I had to tell her, we know all of this. Now tell us what now. What do we do now? So I think awareness is huge, whether it is the small and the medium enterprises or the large scale. The large scale companies, they have the muscle power in all ways to lead the game. But the awareness is huge. People are being responsible. And I'll tell you why. Because most companies, the large companies, will have evaluation parameters when they work with the small ones. So in a way, they are budding and mentoring the smaller ones to catch up on the ESG agenda, and which is, I think, a great thing to do, which is a nice way to evolve this space together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, many, many years ago, when this whole challenge of carbon credits had come, everyone was busy trading carbon credits with one another, buying carbon credits to be able to meet government norms, if I can use that. I'm going to ask you a question that is cynical, but is the Indian corporate sector serious about ESG, or is it just moving towards how do I meet guidelines?
So, the triggers are always different. Let's look at it this way. So what is the trigger for ESG? It's always external. Till we reach a point where it becomes internal. That is when you start seeing value. So the trigger is always internal and external. And I don't think there's anything to beat about it. We all like to compete. We all like to be at par. We like to be called the Fortune 500 company. So you got to play the game in that sense. But when you start looking at ESG from a risk perspective or a purpose perspective, then there will be a game changer. Are we there as yet? No. Do we have roots? Yes. I think if you look at Arthashastra and the way Chanakya defined it, it gave importance that he says, doing business is legit, welfare of the state and the people and the environment. Then if you look at the trusteeship concept of Gandhiji, exactly spoke about the same thing. And if you look at the evolution post-industrialization or that phase, the Tatas and the Birlas and other large companies actually defined what should be the rule and how they will conduct before they became norms or regulation. Correct. So we've got the roots. I don't think we should take away from there or be cynical. I'm very optimistic. Like I said, we are at a level playing field globally.
Wonderful. Yeah. I agree with you completely.
Yeah, so, and I think what I do is that I use my coaching when I'm coaching leaders to seek this idea that yes, you got to make money for the business, but how can you also become a leader in all ways? So, that's why, and I think that's a great way to get them conscious, get them responsible, and be better leaders.
Interesting. So one more question on ESG before I move to the next segment. You did speak about GDP a little bit. So my question, and I've asked this to many people, is an ambitious GDP growth plan contradictory to an ESG strategy?
So I think GDP is a very single metric, and I don't think I would use that. I don't think it's comparing apples to apple.
Okay.
Should we not grow? No, we have to grow responsibly. I think that's the agenda. I mean, today, unfortunately, we spoke about plastics polluting waters. I live in Mumbai, so the ocean is very dear to me. But now we are seeing masks. So it's behavior change. And I think that is something that is never addressed when you talk about ESG. What we're talking about is different kind of metrics. And that is why it has to become a culture of this country. And we have the roots. Can we wake ourselves up?
Very well said.
So, yeah.
So Ruby, I'm now going to move to the third segment, which is your role as a reputation, crisis, and sustainability strategist. Help me understand your work, and if possible, with an example or an anecdote. No names, of course.
Okay, so that's going to be tough, but I'm going to speak. I'll tell you why this interest is as a reputation strategist and how they all sit in together. The way I differentiate a brand and a reputation is brand is what you are telling others about yourself, whereas reputation is what others are talking about you.
Correct.
To others. And I think the focus is largely in the first bucket. But when the focus comes in the reputation bucket, then you're looking at it holistically. You want to understand who are my stakeholders, who are really critical to me. Have we ever mapped our stakeholders? Who should I really be talking, who can influence? And all your stakeholders are talking to each other anyway. What is my reputation? How do I want to be known? So how does my brand represent it? Do my employees represent that reputation? Then your culture, integrity, ethics, ESG, sustainability, everything starts to rest in a more holistic manner. But when you look at it only from a brand perspective, then the objective is only to sell it. But when you're looking at it from a reputation perspective, then it is about institutionalizing, including crisis. So that's how I differentiate it. And I think my interest is in working in the reputation bucket, because then the impact that you will have is long lasting and your stakeholders will stand up for you. One crisis is not going to mar your brand or reputation. Then there is benefit of doubt given to you. There's much more, because I know you much more intimately beyond a brand or a product you're selling. There's more thinking put, sometimes we create launches, but we haven't thought about it totally. Whereas when you look at it from a reputation lens, you're doing scenario planning, you're doing pros and cons, you're doing the SWOT analysis of taking a step like this. So there's much more depth that is created then. Okay. So I don't want to take an example.
Fair enough. And at what stage of a crisis are you called in? When it's become public, or are you actually involved in making sure the crisis doesn't happen?
So the crisis should not happen, or it will. Some things are beyond your control, but my recommendation is anticipate. So again, I'm going back to, so look at the crisis from two perspectives. What is your business risk? I think the whole paradigm of risk has changed. Today, it's not just about technical risk or financial risk or industry risk. Today, geopolitical risks. What's happening in Afghanistan impacts everything.
Correct.
The US president impacts everything. Who will win in India impacts. Today, conversations have become global around it. So I think when you map your risk and then you filter it down and fine tune it to say what will impact my business continuity, then you are anticipating risks.
Okay.
And then you can plan for scenarios, worst, best scenario, medium scenario, what will be my response? And I think this is very important. For example, if I'm working for a technical, very technical company, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not an engineer. If I have to write something during a crisis, and if I am at that point in time trying to understand what are the technical risks of the crisis, then I'm going to lose time. I'm not going to be proactive. I'm not going to do the right thing. So I think it helps if you are involved from day. And very responsible companies will have a crisis committee which they will meet regularly, review what their risks are, look at the scenarios, do actually simulations to understand if this happens, who will be the spokesperson, if somebody is traveling on vacation, who will be your backup. So you do step in to do firefighting, but I think if one can lead this, and I think I had this opportunity a number of times to say this is part of your brand, this is part of your reputation building exercise. If we can proactively do it, then the whole company is involved, because I'm going to go to the scientist and say, can you help me understand this? Can you help me explain? How can I explain this to a layman? Then I think the conversation is very different. Easier said than done. It's a lot of work and it's a lot of effort, but it's worth it.
Interesting. So, Ruby, I'm going to move to the last segment, which are my guests love to, or our viewers and listeners love to listen, to get to know the guest a little more. I have time for 2 more questions.
Okay.
So, my first question is that for someone who's doing so many different things, coaching, ESG expert, reputation crisis and sustainability strategist, what are some of the core values you believe in?
So one is, I think, don't take yourself too seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do what you can. So enjoy it, but give it your best. So I always believe, don't take yourself too seriously. Second is respect yourself and others. I think each one of us is very unique. I attribute my success to everybody who decided to play the game with me. Sometimes very ridiculous and radical ideas. I don't think I can do it alone. So I think everybody brings value. It's like a bouquet. If I just give roses, it's not fun. But if you can bring some weeds and other greens in it, it looks beautiful. So we're all unique, believe in it. And others are unique. So first, respect yourself, then respect others. I think the third value that I hold is be agile and nimble. Nothing is etched in stone. If you look at both coaching and ESG space, they are evolving. It is sometimes difficult to keep track of what is happening. There is so much mobility. And the last one is stay curious. You can learn from anything and everybody. And I think that's why I think I can wear different hats, because I'm constantly saying, isse kya seekhu? What can I learn? What can I learn? What can I learn?
Fantastic. And my last question to you, doing so many different things, who or what inspires you?
So nature, I think I'm a nature lover. I think nature gives so many lessons every single day. It is just so beautiful if we open. And I think a lot of our chemistry and science derives from nature. So why not us? And second, people. Let me tell you a story. So one Sunday evening, I decided to go for a walk, and I came down and I said, I didn't take any money. I went back up. I said, I don't know. I mean, just, want to come take a cab. So I should have some money on me. And as I go a little further, I see this urchin walking across me. Must be all of 6-year-old, face dirty, skipping along, had a small packet. And as we crossed paths, that packet dropped and it had sugarcane juice and it was all over on the road. And we both went, ouch. And I looked at him and I said, Abhi kya? Now what? He said, my mom's going to scold me. So I told him, come, I'll buy you some sugarcane juice. So I'm so glad I went and got my money. And then we went to the shop and he said, I just gave him the juice, but I said it broke. So I asked him, why are you here? There's a municipal hospital near my house. He says, my father is in the hospital. I said, what happened? He says, both his legs have to be amputated. And I'm like, you can imagine, I'm shocked. And the mother would have given him $20 to get him off her back so that she could focus on that. And very matter-of-factly, the guy is having this conversation with me. And then I gave him the cane juice, and the vendor also gave him additional juice. I told him, now you sit here only and drink, don't go anywhere. He's saying, no, I'm going to go to the garden, but I will walk this time. And when I came back home and I heard this story, 6-year-old, the biggest, I don't know, he said everything so matter-of-factly. And he was back to being a child. And I said, there's so much lesson in this. I came home and told my nieces, and I said, something has changed for me. Something shifted inside me. And one of them came in the evening and said, was that a true story or did you cook it up? Now, how much is just learn from that 6-year-old? I can never forget the guy. I never found him again. Incredible. But he taught me a lesson for life.
Fantastic. What a great story to end with. Ruby, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure and a privilege speaking to you. Thank you for talking to me about such diverse things, from coaching to ESG to crisis management. Thank you again and good luck.
Thanks so much, Ashutosh. Such a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.